Okay, we're ready. We'll just call this meeting to order, 7:30. Good morning, everyone. Would
Good morning.
you please lead us in the pledge of allegiance, Jerry?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any deletions or corrections to the agenda? See anything? If not, could I have a motion to approve that?
I'll motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Dave. And a second? Jerry seconds that. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Agenda approval of the minutes. Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes? Need a minute to look over those, or can we? Are we prepared to vote? I guess I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes. Okay,
Did you incorporate the changes?
I did, I sent it out.
Then I'll make a motion.
okay, so Rusty makes a motion to approve. A second. Matt seconds that.
Second.
And all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, minutes approved. Mike is, I believe, on Zoom, and Chad is here with the presentation. And I'm sorry, your name?
I'm Mark Rogers.
Mark.
I'm Michael's. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. So Chad, I would give the floor to you, and I hope you have an awesome presentation for us.
Actually, I'll start off with just a quick
Okay.
introduction and a statement. Can you guys hear me okay?
Okay,
I don't want to get the
that's
feedback.
good.
Just as kind of a recap, Michael and I got involved in Woodland Station a couple of years ago. That was at the time where the Tava people were kind of looking at building a restaurant. So we were just going to build along with them, not really as partners, but alongside of the project. Then when they pulled out, we were interested in doing the whole project. The problem we were faced with is all the people who we wanted to bring in as partners only wanted to look at a small part. Nobody really wanted to take on the whole project. And actually, Al, I think it was you who said maybe a year ago or so, you brought in some professionals who looked at the lot and they figured it was too small to basically resolve some of those developmental issues. So maybe they should just break it up and sell it. The problem we had with that when we were looking at it is as soon as you break that property up, it becomes impossible to develop or to fix some of those developmental issues. I mean, if you couldn't do it with 5.5, you can't do it with 3. So we had to keep looking basically, because our plan A has always been, and this is Michael and I, to do a master plan, basically develop the whole property, whatever that's going to look like. That's what we wanted to do. Because in doing that, then you kind of know the end from the beginning and you get to maximize everything you're doing on the property. If we start with just one chunk and hope it all adds in, you leave a lot that's just going to be underutilized. 6 months ago, we came across Forge Works. And when we brought them up to the property, they looked at the property and said, and we said we want to develop the whole thing. And they're saying, okay, well, let's put some numbers to it and see how that can be done. That was actually the first time we ever heard that statement. So we're thinking maybe we don't have to wait another 20 years to find somebody. And with Forge Works, we discovered they had the wherewithal to do the project, not just bring capital to the project, but they have experience in land development and doing some of these bigger projects, but also they had a heart for the project, a heart for Woodland Park, because anyone we talked to before were more, was really more about the money. So they would look at this project and say, why do we want to invest in this project when there's a project over here where we can have a larger return on investment? That's not where Forge Works started. So essentially, we started looking at now all the options that we could do for Woodland Park that we talked about, because they kind of opened that door. One of the questions then that keeps coming up is, what is the right time to do the project? So I'm going to answer that right now, actually. Our definition of the right time to do the project is when you have all the pieces on the table to complete the budget. And that's what we believe where we're at. We believe that we have the team. We believe that the current board right here on the DDA has enough diversity and experience to actually vote on something like that. We believe that the city, whether it's the city manager, city planner, the city council, and everyone in between, that they have the right people to take this project and turn it into a realization, basically, finally. So that's, so I guess to answer that question, we think the time is now to do the project. So what does the project look like? And Chad will go into detail. We basically, over the last couple of years, Michael and I, we've talked to DDA members, we've talked to city members, we've talked to people in the community. We've looked at the report, the Envision 2030 that the city had put out, and we take all of this information and we put it against the backdrop of now what realistically can we do? What do we have the resources to do with all of that information in mind? And that's the plan that Chad and Lisa, I guess, who's on Zoom, are going to present. So at the end of the day, we believe that you will have enough information on the concept that you can rightly discern whether this is a concept that you want to bring forward to this project. I think we can make that decision today. We're fixing to find out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad.
Thank you, Mark.
Start the presentation. There's a few more people here today than were last time. So we're going to have to share again. We've got 7 presentations. Can you share with them? Sure. Mary Jo will treat you.
Okay, thank you.
You guys share. I got 2 others who. What about?
Well, there's.
Yeah. Lisa is on. Okay. Go ahead, go to the next slide. For the agenda today, we went through the kickoff already, which Mark shared. We're going to review kind of what's been, I think time is a hot button for this group. Been working on it for a long time. Why aren't we done with the project? So I kind of want to do just a quick recap from the time that ForgeWorks got involved. Some people might think we're moving a bit slow. I think we're moving lightning fast. So I just kind of want to recap to show what we have done in the last 4 months as we've tried to get our arms around what this project, what the vision was for it, or what we understood the vision to be, the realities of that vision, and what I think we can bring to the table. And then the proposed path forward, I'm going to turn it over to a young lady by the name of Lisa, and I'll introduce her in a little bit. Why this proposal, why we took the direction that we're taking with it, and then what I believe are the next steps. So go ahead, go 2 slides forward. So the original vision, this was given to me very early on in the process, and through various conversations, this was a concept that was put together at one point in time that everybody seemed to have some support behind it. When I first took a look at this concept, I had a hard time making it work financially. So how would us as a development group, how would we get investors behind it? How would we make it work? And then there were some other elements to this that I struggled with. Is this the right development for Woodland Park? And we had a constraint of the amount of land that we had to go through to develop it. As I looked at it, I felt we had another option. And well, we had a few options, but from this plan, if we had some more real estate to work with, we felt like we could make this plan work. So our initial idea was, can we grab land to the south? Could we grab some properties to the north? Could we grab some other properties in it? Grab might be a bit extreme, but could we? And there were 5 specific properties that we were targeting, 2 of them that were mission critical, meaning that they were go or no go, whether or not we could acquire those properties. And so we started engaging with the different property owners, and we didn't engage with all 5 of them, but we engaged with the 2 that were the most critical. Of those 2, we got one of them. We got a verbal commitment that yes, they would move forward. The second one, it took us a long time to get engaged with them. Couldn't get, for 6 weeks. I was very persistent and eventually got in touch with the owners of that property. On the onset, they said, yeah, we're interested in selling. We asked what price. They said, well, you come to us with an offer. We came to them with what we thought was a good offer. And we took what most reasonable people would say would be the value of that property, and we added 50%. They came back and said it wasn't enough. I said, well, what is enough? At that stage, they doubled it from there. And we said, okay, we'll acquire it at that price. The individual we were engaged with said, well, they were shocked that we accepted their price, that we would move forward with acquiring their property. They came back again and after more discussions, and they said, well, that's not enough money. I said, well, what is enough money again? And I offered double that amount of money again. I didn't know if I would even go forward at that price, but I was just trying to discover, are these guys serious or are they not serious? At the end of the day, they came back and said, we're not willing to sell at any price. That was at the end of March, the last week of March. And so we were left in a scenario where without the additional land surrounding this, I don't believe this model can work. I can't figure out how to make the economics work behind it. And if somebody wants to go into more detail on that, I can certainly answer some questions to it later. But because of that, we changed gears and we went to plan B, D, or C, whichever plan we're on at this point. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So we're basically back to a blank slate again. And from this blank slate, we really feel the best option using what we have within the boundaries of this property is to do a simple mixed use, a combination of mixed use property and high density housing. And we've had a little bit of time. And when that changed, we switched to a different, can I see a raise of hands? Who's familiar with Stantec? Okay, there's a couple of hands. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We had to change members. We were working with an architecture firm that I have good relationship with out of Minnesota called JLG. They're a world-class architectural firm, and the size and scope that the project was at, it certainly fit them. As we learn more about this project, there's some things that JLG started to get outside of their wheelhouse that fits better inside the wheelhouse of Stantec at this particular time. Who is Stantec? Give you an idea of the size of who they are. There are 25,000 people that work for Stantec. They've got 16 different services they offer, from community development to environmental, transportation, building engineer, and many more. 20 different markets, residential, retail, mixed use, and then I'm fortunate enough to have a trusted relationship inside of Stantec as well. And we've used them on past projects that we've done. Why Stantec? Traffic engineering. They're world-class at doing that type of work. Environmental work, they're world-class in doing that. In civil engineering, they're world-class, which are three of the biggest challenges that we see with developing this property. In addition to that, they can certainly do the architectural work and the conceptual and design work. They may not be the right group long-term, but certainly through the conceptual phase, they are the right group to help us to make sure we scope the project and we maximize the use of the real estate within inside the boundaries. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa because Lisa is from Stantec. She works for Stantec. She's helped with some of the initial bubble drawings that we've done. And these, and the work that we've done with it is said, all right, on a conservative basis, what do we think with the limited information that we have at this point in time? What do we think we can get from a maximized development out of this particular piece of project using a combination of mixed use and high density housing capabilities within the boundaries of the property? Lisa, a little bit of her background. I've known her for a few years now. Not only does she work at Stantec, I'll call her a hobby custom home builder. So she owns a couple of other companies in addition to what she does at Stantec. So she's got not only experience for Stantec, but she holds patents in terms of building homes. She's written books. She's done work all over the world in terms of doing housing development and affordable housing in third world countries, which is very different than our definition of affordable housing here in the United States. She also owns a manufacturing facility here in Colorado that produces materials to support her, some of the patented work that she's done. With that being said, is Lisa online and available to mic up?
Yes, I'm here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Lisa.
Would you go ahead and go one more slide up? All right, Lisa, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chad. And thank you for allowing me to present here via Zoom. I'm in kind of Colorado and Golden area, so I wasn't able to make it down this early. Hopefully there's not. But everything Chad said was mostly true, other than that I'm not that young, given the fact that there's been a lot of I've done here at Stantec, as you said, and kind of the construction and design work. I'm a engineer and also architectural designer, so wear a few hats for this conversation and kind of in my work. So as Chad mentioned, Stantec definitely has a great background for buildings and mixed use development. You know, they've done as of recent.
Hey, Lisa.
Yes.
Is that noise in your background or is it somebody else that's online?
Yeah, it might be my background, Chad, and I'm just going to try to fix that. I apologize. 1 second.
She sounds like she's on the bottom of the ship.
Okay, is that any better?
That sounds better. We don't hear the
Okay.
background.
Okay, I'm so sorry. It's just my morning this morning drove me to a coffee shop. So here we go. I'm better now. Okay, so what I did with this design is really looked at the space and the allocation of what we could fit. I learned that there was from this team here a desire to see if we could put about 70 units into the space. So what we're looking at in the yellow is mixed use, and that has retail on a ground floor with housing above it. It assumes an average unit size of about 950 square feet, so that there are ranging 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom units. this type of, depending on the zoning for this area, there will be a certain number of units that need to be accessible, either on the ground floor or an elevator. So I think it's a pretty low percentage, but I think we need to determine what that percentage is for how many need to be on the ground floor. So we'll get into kind of the numbers here on the next slide, but the residential units over the retail, they are assumed to be about 32 to 35 feet deep. There's going to be a 5 or 6 foot breezeway. And so that kind of the width of that yellow box there is about 70 feet deep. And so we can fit approximately 35 units in a 40,000 square foot space. It actually, in that mixed use space A, we can fit approximately 11 units. And in mixed use space B, we can fit about 12 residential units. That also allows for 6 total retailer space that have a space averaging 4,000 square feet. So the retail kind of assumption here is that it would be like coffee shops and bike shops, bookstores, something that could, certainly service this residential proposed location. Moving to the green area, the townhomes, these are assumed to be 2-story. They're 25 foot wide, about 40 or 45 foot deep. So that green box is again about 45 feet deep, what we're seeing. An average square foot unit size of 1,100 square feet. And assumes a kind of mix some parking garages as well as surface parking. So here in this area, for those three green boxes, it has a footprint of about 2,800 square feet. And so we can fit 23 units on 1 story or 45 units on if it's 2 stories. And then of course the surface parking, we had enough surface parking. There's kind of a rule of thumb that 1 car per 1 bedroom unit, 1.5 cars for a 2 bedroom unit, and 2 cars for a 3 bedroom unit. So kind of with some assumptions here, we have enough parking for the townhome area to service those residents, and we have enough parking for the mixed use area kind of around the building. So kind of where I've noted there's future parking to the east and west. So just some general rules of thumb, kind of there was number, square footage allowed for surface parking. And again, the 1,100 square feet and these kind of calculations assume for kind of accessibility around both the parking and the landscaping as well, and the building use as well, stairs and utilities for this. I think you go to the next slide. Okay, so I think I've kind of broken this down for us already in the previous slide, but just so that you can see it, the mixed use space A and B, and kind of the proposed number of units, assuming they range from 800 to 1,100, and then that kind of retail space allocation, as well as the surface parking. So I think that the intention here is that gray box that says courtyard, could be a courtyard for the use of the building. It could be surface parking as well. It is enough parking just for the residents, but not for the retail space at this time. And again, depending on the retail space zoning, we'll have to determine the number of parking spaces required for the retail, but it could be something that we have to look at outside of this. What's been drawn here. Are there any questions for this mixed use, or should I proceed?
Just real quick, Lisa, did you incorporate some of the existing on-street parking in your parking calculations?
No, I did not. That's a good question.
Because there's also some thought that there should be continuation to the west of that same, angled parking scenario that might, accommodate some of that commercial parking for that retail use parking.
That's right. I did learn that would probably have to be identified additional parking. But yes, I just was looking at the areas kind of within these colored boxes.
Lisa, you're a little bit hard to understand.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
Any other questions?
I have one for Lisa.
Rusty's got one too.
Lisa, this is Rusty Neal. For the dwelling units where you have the townhomes, do you have the approximate price range type of townhomes? Are these going to be falling in the attainable housing category, or are these going to be luxury townhomes? Just
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Neil. Let's go to the next slide and then I might have Chad answer this. The townhome slide here. Again, here's kind of the allocation of square footage and kind of what we can achieve for parking. I think that, of course, we'd really love to hear what the needs are within the town and having this be, affordable, but by no means kind of cheap or, construction now where it is, obviously there's such ranges and there's very fluctuating market. Chad, do you want to add to that?
Yes, so that's been a discussion we've been going back and forth on, and we'll show some pictures of just ideation of what, things could look like. And you get some beautiful looking townhome scenarios, and then you're talking $1 million 2-bedroom condos in downtown Woodland Park, and while that might work in downtown Denver or downtown Dallas, it probably doesn't work in Woodland Park. At the same time, I don't think we're looking to do square boxes that are low income housing either. So I think the balance is somewhere in the middle where we capture the heart of the mountain town, Western living atmosphere, and obviously construction costs range. You go from $300 a square foot to $600 a square foot, depending on what range you go with those different developments. So I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on that as we get just a bit further down the slide deck. The short answer is, I think we're going to try to find the balance in that. And that probably ranges, somewhere between so many variables, right? And a loaded question, but ranges somewhere between 250 and let's say 550,000 for, what we would consider in that affordable class. So does that kind of answer your question? And then I think we look for guidance from you guys too. So thank you very much.
Thanks. More questions? Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. So you can advance to the next slide. I think this is kind of where maybe we'll divert here a little bit. So in what we're seeing a lot here in terms of what works cost-wise is a 3-story walk-up apartment. Again, back to the percent number of units that need to be accessible via the ground floor. But this does not require an elevator, and there's assumed exterior stairs that provide access to 4 units. It's a very repeatable design. On the next slide, you can see some layouts. But this is kind of a sweet spot for multi-use housing, and again, where there's kind of a cost effectiveness in kind of going vertical. I know that there is a height restriction for this lot of 35 feet, I believe, and so we did try to achieve that with flat roofs, rooftop access. But here you just see kind of the repeated one bedroom unit on 4 quadrants that's accessible via 1 set of stairs. Chad, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think, so I think that's some of the work that we've been doing with Stantec. When you first to hear the idea of, can we get 70 units or can we get 110 units on a 5-acre lot? Is that even feasible? And that's where we started working with Stantec and Lisa, the work that Lisa's been doing. The short answer to that is yes, I think it is feasible. Now, is that something we want to do? That's going to be the big question today. Why don't we go ahead and back up? I think it's 4 slides, 4 or 5. One more. If you take a look at the specific drawing that we have here, I'm going to step around this side. Show. You know, these are just blocks that have been placed on here in line. In reality, we've got challenges with the property, right? So I'm sure this is not how those townhomes play out. What we see would probably turn 45 degrees and sit down in the corner. A maybe turns 45 degrees and sits up here. B maybe sits over here. We get civil engineering, there's involved. Civil engineering may have the capability to get us to the place to put 4 of those units in. And if we put 4 of those units in there, would city planning support that or not? Is there enough infrastructure inside of Woodland Park to be able to support that? We designed this, and so a lot of the numbers that you see here are based upon a 2-story, which we think is very feasible. But can we push those boundaries and go to a 3-story wall? I believe if we do some creative things within how we do our designs, how we recess the buildings into the, with the fall that we have in the back, we can keep that skyline. Maybe mixed use A and B or 2-story. Maybe we did the townhomes at a 3-story level. Those are different discussions. And I think this is where we need guidance from the DDA and also the city planning as to how far we push those boundaries. This, I believe what Lisa is going over, is a conservative. I think we can easily get to 7 units of housing. I think we can easily get to 6 to 8 additional units of what we call a retail space in that environment. So anyway, I just want to kind of come back to that and make sure, no, we're not trying to put townhome A, B, C in that order. We'll add some illustration that make that more pleasing. The other elements in here that we've discussed is how do we take that welcome center and how do we integrate that so it's a seamless flow moving in through the courtyard, through the mixed use environment. That's where we get the designers involved and get them, you know, I'm a square box guy. I like 90 degree straight lines, no curves, everything's perfect, right? Designers are making it possible to build, but we'll frustrate the balance in there somewhere. But as we get designers involved, how do we integrate that welcome center in with the courtyard? How do we take what are liabilities today in terms of liabilities from one hand, which are drainage ditches and retention ponds, and how do we turn those into features that are landscape features that are integrated with the property and that are aesthetically pleasing to not only the people that live within these complexes, but also those that are going to be in and out of the retail centers, in and out of the welcome center, in and out of the other businesses that are surrounding this area. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Go ahead
Lisa,
and
do you
go
have
forward.
more?
Go ahead.
Lisa?
I'm sorry, what's that?
No, Lisa, I was just telling Lisa to go ahead.
Um, Yeah, I think we're getting through the slides here pretty well. So this is the 3-story walk up. This, Chad, I'll kind of let you take it from here, I think, to the end almost. Just some design concepts that the team had put together. But, you know, my feedback again on kind of how luxurious we go with this. These are beautiful and stunning, obviously. And I think wanting to stay within the mountain style architecture. I know that we have kind of identified some other options, but you know, really looking at sustainable, high quality materials that are low maintenance and certainly kind of fit within the theme of Woodland Park.
Thanks, Lisa. I think Lisa will stay online, and so if there's questions for her as we get a little bit further down the road, presentation. Just wanted to put some slides up here. You know, like I like to say, I don't like any of these. but I like pieces of all of these to set expectations. So if you think we're going to build the one on the left, probably not. If you think we're going to build the one on the right, we probably can't afford that. I don't know if the city can afford that. But is it some combination of these? I think the answer to that question is yes. I know the question, that answer is yes. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Rooftop living is something that we've talked about. I think if we stay within the confines of a two-story option, we would definitely move to a rooftop living scenario. It's pretty common. And I'm going to show you why here in just a second, which I know you already know, but a visual I think is always good. Go ahead and go one more. I do like the one on the right. It's my personal of some of these images that we've put up. I think it's got a nice pleasing look to it. I like some of the roof lines. So idea wise, I think that's a bit of what we're looking for. And then we'll pull in other elements as we go forward. Go one more slide. I'm gonna run the video real quick. I didn't know I was gonna cost you money at the back. All right, that's, as you guys all know, there's $1 million views from that property. And that is as important as the facilities themselves. We did a bunch of drone videos and stuff showing what it would look like if you're sitting at a 3-story or sitting on top of a rooftop. If there was a possible, I'm a little nervous to say this because I don't want to feel like we would create an environment that's going to compete with other restaurants and stuff within town. That is not our intent. But if we deem that a restaurant and having some rooftop eating and stuff would be of value to the city, I think that's a good idea. And those views from a rooftop are $1 million views. And so that's why I think we're in the final architecture, I would expect to see rooftops, accessible rooftops, where we've moved some of that living to the top of these buildings. And then trying to get views out the back. Back porches, back windows from the 2nd story or 3rd story, however we end up doing that construction. Next slide. So the path forward, retail space, and just drop down to the bottom on the green side. So based upon a 2-story option, A, B, and C townhomes, 69 residential units, 6 to 8 retail shops, and 125 parking spaces. Give you an idea, guys, an idea. This is 104,000 square feet of space on a 2-story. If we went to a 3-story scenario, we would be roughly about 150 to 160,000 square feet. Give you an idea of the scope of the project. When we start to go up, we can lower some of our per square foot cost in terms of construction. There's a wide range of variables. What is this project going to cost? I think on the lower side, we're sitting at about 32 million. That's a very aggressive number. I think on the higher side, we could sit somewhere around a $75 million project. I think we'll land somewhere in the middle. And obviously there's big swings in that if we go from 2-story to 3-story, if we go from 3 buildings to 4 buildings in the townhome section. And then I think it was Rusty, you had asked the question, what's the price range? That's going to have a big difference in terms of what the budget is for the project. And that's the work, that's the heavy lifting that's going to have to take place next. Next slide. You want to see the video?
Yes.
All right. So this is facing the hardware store. And even your views to the west are very pleasant. quite enjoyable. And then obviously you bring that around and swing that around and you get, this is probably your $1 billion view in today's world. And that's just priceless. And to be able to get up and to be able to have that view from that rooftop or from that second and third floor, I think that's one of our objectives. I think when we look at the orientation of how we position those buildings, that's certainly going to be taken into consideration as we look at the designs. So why this proposal? Economically, it works. Okay. Can't say that with 100% certainty yet today. We got to get a little bit further down the road based upon some of the challenges. But I feel like we can spread that infrastructure cost, potential environmental issues, okay, that we've discovered through the process of looking to acquire some of the neighboring properties. We discovered that there may be some additional environmental costs associated with the development. I don't know, and I've heard 2 stories on this. So we got to figure that out. The excavation costs for this property are not on the low end. They're going to be on the higher end to redo some of the excavation. And there's some other elements that make this property not as desirable as others when it comes to building out the infrastructure. With the 70 units, 70 plus units, we can spread that cost around them. If we can go to a 3-story and possibly a 4 building, then that becomes even more economically feasible for us as developers. It also gives us more economies of scale, to answer your question, Rusty, because if we got to carry that cost across 70 units versus 110 or 130 or 140 units, all right, that's the difference from us going from say a $300,000 unit to a $375,000 unit. So the ability to be able to work with the DDA and be able to work with city planning in those designs allows us to create more affordable, in the definition affordable, for downtown living inside of Woodland Park. The other thing I want to bring us to is in the Envision Woodland Park 2030 plan, that's what was paid for by the city to give us guidance as to how do we do these types of developments. I pulled out 4. I could have easily put up 20 statements in here, and I apologize, but I didn't read this until last night. Okay, and so the fact that we got this far down the road, and Mark and these guys were telling me about it, but I hadn't read it until I read it last night. I'm like, it's I think it's almost a bit of a miracle that we ended up at the place that we're at in terms of the type of development that we're talking about. So number 1, promote stable and safe neighborhoods that provide a variety of housing options. So back to your question again, Rusty, I don't think we're looking at low income housing. I think we're looking at a more affluent type of community that we want to build up. I think it is your professional workforce inside of Woodland Park. So anything from your city planner to your small business owner to the guy that owns the coffee shop down the street, whatever that might be, that's, we're looking to serve that community. Number 2, encourage each new project or subdivision to add a mix of housing models and styles to ensure that housing types enable people to remain in the community as their needs change and protect against existing neighborhood property values and character. When you have a thriving downtown, which Woodland Park has that, but there's also some struggling parts of downtown Woodland Park too. I think with this design, it certainly allows everyone in the city to be able to thrive. It brings that additional foot traffic downtown. We make it aesthetically pleasing. We make it fit within the architecture of the community. Community character design and objective 1.2, strengthen downtown new neighborhoods, redevelopment areas by promoting mixed use, which is a big part of what we're doing, attractive appearances, certainly, and connections to the rest of the community. And last one, encouraging new attainable and affordable housing development opportunities and integrate into new residential projects when feasible. I think this is a big opportunity for the city of Woodland Park, a big opportunity for the board. Next slide. Next steps, and then I'll go to questions. What we're not asking for, we're not here asking the city or the board for money. Okay. We're not asking you to do another study. We're not asking you to do a bunch more analysis. What we're asking for is, how do we get this thing moving and moving at a realistic pace? Some people think, 3, 4, 5 years is slow. When I look at these types of projects, I'm like, yeah, if we can get this thing beginning to end finished in less than 5 years, everybody around this room should give themselves a pat on the back. Okay, can we get it done in 3? Maybe, but I think that's a very optimistic view. What I am looking for today is approval of the concept. So can we as a DDA today vote and say, yeah, we can approve this concept and we can move it to the next step? The second is, can you approve us moving to a phase of us having the exclusive rights to develop this plan? Not that we'll sign that today or anything. And then how I would treat that is we're really looking for you to commit to this roadmap today. Phase 1, final agreement to the process. So what we would do in the next 60 days, then we would look to cement that into the form of a contractual commitment, a contractual agreement between the DDA and also with the city. It's my understanding that the DDA potentially doesn't have the full control of the property or could lose control of the property in December of 2023. Is that a true statement I just made or not?
December 31st. The city has the option to enter into discussions with the current disposition and development agreement that's signed between the DDA. The city could take possession of the property back, but that would have to be a very deliberate process in coordination with the DDA. Obviously, if there's a project going, I think the city council would be a little bit lenient and may grant some sort of an extension. But it is correct that the current disposition and development agreement, the city does have the option on December 31st, 2023. If, and here's the kicker, if the development is not complete, we all know it's not going to be complete, may not even be being broken. I mean, we may still be in the contract and design paperwork phase in 18 months or whatever it is from now. But if there's significant progress, it may find favor on the council to grant another extension to the current disposition of development.
Pardon me. Can you clarify how does it work that the city could take it back with Charter 917? That precludes the city from offering incentives or anything for development. So by taking the DDA back into your lap there,
Not the DDA, Woodland Station property.
Okay.
Convert back to
Gotcha.
City control, but the DDA continues to exist.
Gotcha.
So I think because there are some complexities in that, and I don't know if we need to solve those today. That's why I said for the next 60 days, we would look to solve that and move that into a form of a contractual agreement. And because just be clear, we will not be complete by December 31st, 2023. And also for us to move to the next phase, we would start to secure funding for this contingent upon the signing of that agreement. Okay, so because we will start spending hard dollars at that point. To engage a Stantec is not a cheap process. So, we'll have hundreds of thousands of dollars tied up in Stantec just to get through what I would call phase 4 of this project. Okay. And so we'll need that commitment that we'll be able to carry this thing all the way through completion. Now, we're willing to assume the risk that we spend that X number of dollars with Stantec to get through phase 4, with the idea that we might say at that point, this is not a project that we think is economically feasible for us. Or at the end of phase 4, going into phase 5, it is our expectation at that point that you will have seen full designs, full illustrations. We will have completed our due diligence around environmental studies. We will have completed our due diligence around civil engineering to support whatever construction efforts that we need to do. And we've got a very clear line of sight to take this project across the finish line at that stage. At which point we would like to move into the transition of the property over to underneath where we would own the property. We'll just make it plain and simple. Where we would own that property at that point in time, and we would then, and as part of owning that, we'd make the commitment to execute upon that, the design that we present. And that would be one more go, no go point in the process, both from our side and from the DDA's perspective. And then from there, it's just a matter of, we'd have to finalize engineering. That's probably easily a 6-month process, if not longer. Once we've completed engineering, we'd finalize permits and uses, and all the other things. And there, I'm sure there's a steady stream beginning in phase 2 all the way through phase 10 of working with the city planner and making sure that we're moving through with the community and approvals, appropriate approvals, and those types of things along the way. And then horizontal and vertical, and then we celebrate. Simple, right?
Simple.
I think I'm done talking. You guys are probably tired of listening to me talk. Questions you have before we talk about any decisions that need to be made?
Just kind of a broad understanding of your product. So it looks like, the northerly portion, you're looking, what you're calling your mixed use area, is apartments for rent above and retail units below.
Correct.
And whereas the next portion, the townhome portion, you would be looking for units for sale, individual townhome units, so attached residential development for sale.
Probably a combination in the townhome side. So some units being for sale, some units maybe being some long-term rentals, and some units being short-term rentals. So, and I think what we would like to do, it's my understanding that city planning is working on some guidelines for the city in terms of what is the appropriate mix for that. I think we would like to be a model in that and say, all right, what is that right balance, and work along with city planning to be showcase might be a bit extreme, but certainly to follow their guidelines.
More questions from the board?
I have two more.
Rusty?
The first question for Karen, and this is just to refresh myself, and I'm not sure if this is, you have this number. How many taps do we have, water taps do we have available right now, planned for the Woodland station?
I do not have that number.
Okay. I don't remember. I was told what it was. Arden, do you remember off the top of your head? Because I think you had that
It's
conversation.
112 or 120.
Okay.
Residential
Just
taps,
one of those.
exclusive of the commercial.
Okay. So I just wanted to let everybody know that they're talking 69, 70-ish units right now. So there's quite a bit of taps potentially available as you consider what you want to do. Thank you, Karen. Chad, the next one is, are you looking at the possibility of a mix of attainable and professional, or could you, as you're doing your analysis of the composition of the dwelling types on the townhomes or the living spaces, could you possibly look at some of them being at the attainable, and there's a specific definition of attainable for Woodland Park versus what you're calling it the professional, because it may be a slight pricing difference. And the reason why I'm asking if you can do that is I'm a member of the CML liaison, and I've been doing a lot of reading. There's a lot of funds coming available at the state level, grants for cities that have some piece of attainable housing that they're trying to accomplish. The city might gain some funds that could be used to help you.
It certainly is, I do not know is the answer to the question.
And that's fine.
And I don't think, what I don't think we would do is I don't think we would do, I'll call it low income housing on one end,
That's not what I'm talking about.
right? Or attainable at one end and high end on the other. I don't know that I see us doing that. Doesn't mean we might have a variety of options in there where, you know, you go into communities and you can buy a home ranging from 400,000 to 800,000. Will we have those types of options? I think so, because I do believe there's a percentage of these that we're going to sell. And so if that buyer comes in and says, hey, I want granite countertops and I want, you know, the price of that unit is going to be very different than somebody that chooses other design options or floor plan options that we would make available.
Rather than it being a question, maybe it's just offering. If you could look at that,
Yep.
It would be probably prudent. I don't know if it's feasible, possible. The designers, like you're saying, you don't want to throw high and low, but attainable is very specific definition. And there is a lot of funding available at the state level, and they're pushing municipalities to take actions, encourage developers to go after some piece of that, and they can help us as a city. And I'll leave it at that without any further.
I just want to verify where that is. Is that in the Envision report? Is that where that definition
Now,
is?
you have to go out and read a lot of the legislative actions at the state level to see it. The CML produces a lot of documents that talk about the different grants. I'll see if I can get some of those documents available so I can tell you what type of grants there are. From your perspective, it really doesn't matter. It's the city would go after the money, but it would allow the city to have some money to probably do a little something with the infrastructure help.
Yeah, we'll certainly look at that up front because it helps to know that, especially at this stage, because we got a lot of flexibility.
Correct.
And we can tell pretty quick by what those documents say on whether we think they're going to fit within this project.
Right.
But now's the time to look at all of those things. So we'll have that.
And you do know it's CML, Colorado Municipal League?
Yeah, I was going to look it up online. Is that the? I know
Colorado
what that
Municipal
is.
League,
So,
yes.
okay.
And they put out a publication that lists the different programs and the bills that have made it. Well, some are just bills, but they also include what bills have actually been voted into law and what funds are actually out there, and how to go, what websites to go to for applying for it. But a lot of that work would be done by the city if your plan had those potentials in it.
So we'll look into that first to see. And again, and Chad has already said this, these are concepts. We're saying to you, like, are we on the right page?
Correct.
That's what we're looking for today. But absolutely, if there's funds available, that does nothing but help us and you. So it's certainly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Tony, you got
Of
any
course, I took lots of notes. Yeah, so first of all, from a concept perspective, I think you've landed where I believed it needed to be all along. Mixed use, residential. It's the only thing that's made sense in my mind from the beginning for that property. So I think it's good that you've landed in the right place. Quick look at Stantec versus substantive. So I think that's a great move. I think you kind of alluded to a potential acquisition. I think I'm aware of that. And I think I was actually pretty impressed with the concept of it. And I thought it was a creative, take a stab at it kind of concept. So kudos for that. I know you did talk to the owner of the trailer park, and we've been talking to that party for quite a few years, and we understand the challenges there. I think we had a short window where he wanted to sell probably 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, but that window is closed for now because the cash flow is too good. I guess a couple of things I heard, I think. One that makes sense. I think I heard that in this process that you're laying out, that you're doing your due diligence, your entitlement work before you execute on the development, you would want to own the property, which in my world, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But my question is, and I'm not going to hold you to this because this is future stuff, but in your mind today, with the work you've already done, you took a run at acquisition. How much do you believe that 6+ acres is worth today as it sits?
Great question. So one of the things I'd like to do over the next 60 days is establish a framework by which we would make the decision as to financially, how do we move through the acquisition of that property at the end of phase 3 or phase 4, at the end of phase 4. Those 3 levers, as I see them, are taxes, cost of the land, and who pays for infrastructure. So the land may be 0, but the taxes are something different. Or the land may be 0, but we put a lot of the infrastructure burden back on us as the developer. And so I think that's going to take some collaboration with the city to understand what latitude they have or do not have on different infrastructure components. And when it comes, especially that horizontal work. And then, so that's what I'd like to do over the next 60 days is put together that framework so that when we get to phase 4 and we look to make that transition to acquiring the property, it doesn't, we've done all this work and we see great value. All of a sudden the DDA sees great value and now we want $30 million for the land. And just an arbitrary number, right? So I think it's more about the framework and less about what's the value of the land. I do think there's value in the land. The environmental one scares me a little bit. I'll just be honest. So that one, I could see that being, depending on how those reports come back, could have significant impact into us being able, because we have to make money at the end of the day. Okay. And that could have a significant impact on it.
Yeah. So, and you led me to kind of like my second thing. I'm doing a report later on the document project. Mr. Williams reached out to me and asked for the TIF agreement for Trail Ridge Apartments, which makes complete sense, seeing the presentation. And we'll talk about that today because there's no reason why we don't provide that. It's just a matter of making sure that what we provide is accurate, hopefully.
Okay, excellent.
So, you know, have on the drainage ditch, you know, in the last 4 months or the last 2.5 years, have you explored that? And are you aware have you reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers for some initial data information? Because you probably have to deal with them in this process.
Yeah, we have not at this point, and we probably wouldn't start that until we start doing the 10% phase of the concept work. And that's at the time that we'll start bringing in the civil engineer part of it. We'll start bringing the designers in. We'll start getting them collaborating together. So the short answer is no.
Okay. And the second is, you know, because I'm thinking in terms of if I'm a developer, what are my biggest potential expenses? Obviously, the drainage ditch could be a non-starter. Any initial thoughts? And I know you haven't conducted a traffic study. That wouldn't be prudent at this point. But with Stantec's experience in the layout of this property, the proximity to 24, is there any sense of where that traffic study would come in? You know, maybe leveraging the traffic study from Trail Ridge or whatever. Have you done any work around that?
We have not. We have identified, and earlier I was trying to think what the third element that was going to be a high expense, and that is the third element. So if we start having to look at lights and having to change some of that, you know, access through 24, and you know, that could get very expensive.
Yeah, because obviously if you have to put a light there by the hardware store, you know, it's $1 million starting. I mean, it just starts at that.
Yep.
So, okay. I guess the only other thing, like I said, I think conceptually and I'm just one person, mixed use, commercial, residential has been the only thing that's really made sense. You know, even going back to the open air amphitheater, you know, total money loser. You have to find a way to add value to the property, to the community, but also make money. You know,
Right.
I'm a capitalist, so I agree with you making money. So that makes a lot of sense, but looking at the layout, and I've looked at it just like everyone else has for 22 years. You know, I think the trailer park is a non-starter for now. There could be an opportunity in the future, you know, so, and I think there's some fairly inexpensive ways to kind of shield that a little bit to kind of take care of that issue in terms of line of sight. But it's very clear to the north there, and we get into a sticky point, and I don't want to make this a political thing, but you're going to have to, we as a board need to give you a pathway, frankly, to speak to Mr. Weatherford in a open, upfront way so that you can have that discussion. Because if you look at your layout, the rest of that property there, it would make a lot more sense if it were in play. And then the end product would make a lot more sense for the community, for everyone. It's a sticky point. Don't want to get into the recusing thing because Mr. Weatherford knows if anything comes up that impacts him in terms of his property rights, he has to recuse himself. But you know, we have to give their group a pathway to speak to Mr. Weatherford in an open, upfront, sanctioned way, period. We have to do that. Otherwise, that, you know, you have to solve the bigger picture there. And it's only going to make sense. I suspect once we get past those 3 high-end cost possibilities, the more that property to the north that you can put in play, the better to make the project viable, period. So, but I like the concept. I think I've liked it from day one. I was there at the meeting over here in the planning department where we had the 11 high flyer developers in town sitting around carving up the property. They were going to get it for 0 if they committed to building a building on it. They had it all mapped out, looked pretty. It was $200 million price tag. I think even at that time in 2003, 4, Mark probably remembers, you were probably there. And when it came time to sign on the line, no one signed. So mixed use residential, commercial splashed in, I don't think for what you're proposing, it will impact the other, because I'm very sensitive to the other property owners, the other business owners, frankly, on Main Street. I don't think it would impact them there.
I would think they would welcome the additional foot traffic.
Yeah, for those of us who believe in free market, we need another 7 great restaurants in town. We need other options. We need other options, and we need to complement each other and support each other. Anyway, so I guess if you're asking conceptually, does it make sense? It makes sense to me. I think there's a ton of work to do. I'm guessing that engaging Stantec, you finally have written a check for a little bit of money. Have you spent any money yet is the question.
Not with Stantec, we have
Okay.
not.
Okay.
So what we're doing with them right now, coming out of here, we'll look for a proposal coming back from them, and we'll look to engage them to carry us through this 30% phase of this, which is the phase right before we go to engineering. So, and they've got a methodology. So like this method, the 10-phase approach, it's a bit of a hybrid of Stantec's model. So they've got a 30, 60, 90, 100% model that you move through with very defined deliverables through that whole process.
Okay. I think that's all for me for now.
Okay. I think that's an important statement you made about the drainage, the headwaters of Fountain Creek. Through the years, all that was surface water. There is no live water there. It's all been surface water drainage, and it has been a problem. But a lot of that through the city has been put underground. And I don't think that it's quite the problem it used to be. I would like to see the DDA partner with the city and approach the government Department of Engineers and see if there could be some kind of lenience against their requirements of how to handle the water that doesn't really exist like it used to.
So we have had our excavators on site, and they're like, let's bring dozers and loaders and we'll change the whole thing. So they're excited to go already.
Yeah.
But they
Yeah.
like to roll coal.
I
So
mean, do we know if that's designated waters of the US? I'm not sure that it is up that far in the creek.
Well, has been considered headwaters of Fountain Creek.
It is the headwaters, but I don't
Yes.
know if it's,
I don't know that.
so it'd be worth setting up a sidewalk with Corps engineers, and that they'll do that for free. It just doesn't
Yeah.
commute about. I don't see the vegetation that would necessitate any wetlands analysis or any of those aspects, but I'd pipe it. I mean,
Yeah, David, the last time we checked in, and I'm referencing back to Bill Alsbach, the former city engineer. His initial foray with the Army Corps of Engineers wasn't positive. They really didn't want to do anything. And so, but we're 10 years later, and I think, Mary Jo, it might make sense to approach them, at least from the city, maybe DDA perspective, just to feel out the waters with them, so to speak.
so Chad, I'll talk with Bill
Okay.
and get you some history of that.
that'd be great. And I think that like the engagement with Stantec, I'm not the person, and our team isn't the right team at this stage to even receive that information, to have the intelligent conversation. We can be a part of it. If you spend enough time with me, you'll hear me use words like cute conversations. As we bring Stantec on board, I want to be able to receive that information into a channel that we can make decisions on and execute on. So I think the timing of that is when we move into that initial going from 0 to 10%. So that 0% mile marker, so I think queuing up the right resources, like what you're doing, would be perfect, and that's excellent. And then immediately starting at 0%, we want to engage them with the right individuals and the right people at Stantec, so that we can have a collaborative conversation by which we may be able to influence some of their decisions. So it's a collaborative process of the right people at the table. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Engineers tend to get in the weeds on things, but
I'll move it
We'll
ahead though.
Yeah.
I think there's some engineers on the, yeah. So I
Well,
think you're a businessman too, right?
correct.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's important enough now to talk about that and ask the board to maybe request Rusty to bring that up to city council, that at the proper time, city council, city staff, city council support to city staff and us to work with them to approach the Corps of Engineers about that
Right.
site.
Yeah.
If we could get that approved early enough, then at the proper time, we would be prepared to step forward with you. Would that sound good for this board to agree on?
I think that's fine. I think
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and get history and provide that to you.
Yep.
For no
That'd be
issue.
great.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that'll give us a starting point.
Okay, then you take that step, Rusty can take the next step, then we'll just move forward. So we're prepared at the proper time with the information. Is that
Okay.
okay? Board? Okay. Then Arden's, Tony's suggestion was Arden. Arden, are you willing to be open for them to reach out to you?
I've been open with these guys from the first day.
Okay.
I reached out to Mike Williams 2 years ago,
Uh-huh.
had a conversation, sent him an email, and I haven't heard anything from him until April 20th
Okay.
of this year,
Okay.
which is after the expiration period of this time we've given them to come up with a concept.
So but
So-
you'd be prepared, you'd be open to it now.
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. Does this board agree that that is not a conflict of interest, that we welcome
Absolutely not.
them talking? Okay, we have an absolutely not. Any more comment on that?
I would speak to Tony's discussion that, that they're adjacent parcels. And if there can be coordination between those parcels, it should be encouraged.
Okay,
And I think that's important to have.
Not with the board.
okay. Well, then if that happens and should move forward, then that would be the time to address a conflict of interest situation. But I don't see any problem with them having those talks until that time
And I think the
that
way
an
we should
agreement's made.
agree, and I think the board should look at the conflict of interest definition so that we know that any business that substantially or has a substantial gain or loss different from all other businesses in the DDA, they must recuse themselves. So it would probably become a default that if they entered into a partnership, there's potential for a significant benefit. And my expectation was that when it comes time to vote, that there would be a self-recusal.
No, I would love to recuse myself for a real project going forward.
Right. So, but I think we as a board should focus on our own charter on what the conflict of interest states and use that as our guide.
Well, we shouldn't be sitting up here directing them to contact Art, as that's a direction. I heard it, and that's not right. Why is it okay for somebody to gain personal gain that sits on the board by their decisions? It's a huge conflict of interest, and there's a point where it's going to become corruption.
So then are you asking that if they have any talks that Arden step down from the board of
I think you should
Of the
step down
DDA.
now.
Can I,
comments on that?
can I interject something maybe?
Sure, Chad.
Just real quick. One of the models we have at Forge Works, we like to think we operate with integrity at the highest level at all times. And we like to have as much transparency as we possibly can at all times. And we also like to treat those that are at the table with the utmost dignity at most times too. A little bit of history, just Arden to come back. We had 5 properties that we were targeting. 2 of those properties were go, no go properties to realize the initial vision. We got to go. We had a green light on one of them. And then we got the non-green light, which I talked about earlier. I was holding on the other 3 specifically out of respect of time. Because if it was no go, then I wasn't even sure we were going to necessarily where we were going to go with the advancement of the project. So I didn't want to waste individuals' time. Our plan coming, assuming we get the green light to move forward on this concept, is my plan was to reach out to Arden immediately following this meeting, because what you talked about earlier in terms of including those other 2, I think it would be brilliant that somehow we find a way to work together to bring that in. Traffic patterns being one of them. Okay, so that would be big. And then the continuity by which we could get that, I think would lead to answers some of Rusty's, because we potentially then, not that we would want to burden Arden with challenges that are on the existing property, but there is some opportunities, gain some economies of scale, because we incorporate a master plan that graphs that property into. But my assumption on that in terms of process of going forward would be we're all adults and we all wear different hats at different points in times. Arden wears a couple of hats. And sorry if I'm misstep here, Arden, please let me know. I wasn't intending to go here with the conversation today, but I assume one of the hats he wears is being a board member here. Another hat that he wears is being a business owner. And then another hat he wears is he happens to be owns real estate that has value next to the same property that we're talking about. So I would approach him not as him being a board member, but as him being the owner of that property. And from that discussion, some decision would be made. We work together, we don't work together, whatever that decision is made. At that point, then we would start to graph that into more of a master plan, at which point I'm sure Arden would, I have a base assumption with everybody I meet that everybody is good in good intentions. I've been burned by that in the past, but you have to operate that way. And so then Arden and I would both operate from a position of integrity when it came back to this board. And what that looks like, I'm sure we'll collaborate as to how we do that with honesty, transparency, and integrity. So that would be my intention of how we would move that forward. And just in full transparency, that's probably a phone call within hours or days or a handshake at the end of the meeting of saying, how do we advance the conversation?
Tony?
Yeah, so just a couple of things. So I agree with your approach. I believe that we all wear multiple hats in this room. Having that conversation, I think, is important, because it's either going to go one direction or the other. That conversation needs to be had, from my perspective, looking at the big picture. I think big picture most of the time. I believe this board is capable. We have attorneys. Most of us understand what conflict of interest means. I think we can navigate that fine if we get there. I'm not even convinced that we'll get there. So
I'm not either. So
while I have
it's
the
just a
mic,
process.
yeah, while I have the mic, you're asking for two things today. Approval of the concept at a high level. I've already told you, I agree with the concept at a high level. And I'll just make my thoughts known on the exclusive commitment to the roadmap. Roadmap makes sense. My spidey sense after 4 months of due diligence is as a board member, I would prefer to have a 30, 60-day pause on doing any exclusivity agreement. That doesn't mean you can't continue doing some work. You're not going to put in any real money until you feel like you can execute the roadmap. I understand that. But I think a 30-day pause, 60-day pause, I don't know if there's anything out there in the market that might shake out and some other players might emerge. We've honored our 4-month non-compete commitment to you.
Yep.
And I'm going to argue for a 30-day, 60-day pause on any exclusivity agreement. But I don't see anyone else in the room clamoring to go the roadmap. So, but I think it's prudent to do a short pause and see if anyone else out there shakes out. My 2 cents.
Other comments?
I agree with pause. I agree with the pause. I second that.
Pause. I would say, personally, I don't see anybody else out there either. I
There
would
can't
say
be
that's
somebody else. We said that we wouldn't talk to anybody else.
I said that, what do you need, Chad? Well, are you okay with a 30, 60-day pause? Do you feel comfortable with that?
I think the way I have it framed almost is a 60-day pause in there anyway. What I would recommend is maybe frame it a little bit differently and create an open space between now and 60 days. In that open space, what we would do is have our attorney draft up a contract that would move us into an inked exclusive agreement. And then we would find what I'm not sure of is working with the DDA is how do we move that contract forward? So we can draft it, and then I'm not sure how we incorporate the city as a part of that, because we need to get our investors to bring money to the table. We'll probably put up the first round, okay? But we have to start pulling the investors in for future rounds. So
Well, and I guess, from a 30, 60 day, I think this board, we need to and we've already started it. Unfortunately, we can't hand it to you today, but we need to give you that good TIF agreement data. We need to discuss as a board, because right now, with the life cycle of the DDA, we can give a more aggressive schedule on a reimbursement. They typically had a graduated 10-year, typical 15-year. Well, with we can always extend the DDA. That's not my desire, but TIF agreement, I think, is going to be a big factor here. And so we need to get our act together and not only provide that information to you, but to anyone out there for any potential DDA project like Mr. Patel, who we expect to come in the next month or two. So we have some deliverables back. So, I like the way you're framing it. I think we still get to the same place where I'm not going to vote to give you a exclusivity agreement today, but we have some work to give to you so you can continue your process. You're going to engage your attorney so you can come back and give us the first shot across the bow of something that makes sense to you. I think that's a good process.
And that works for you? Does that work for you, Chad?
So I think what I would like to do is in 60 days, be able to return with what I think is a good agreement And if that works, then in 60 days, you guys would approve us, or you will have discovered another player or another path forward by which you say the direction with you guys on this project is a no, or you need another 30 days or whatever that might be. So, and I think that actually fits with what I have up here still with what we were intending.
Yeah, that's what I think I saw.
And I think that works. I think the other aspect you were looking for today is high concept, either thoughts or approval from the board. And so I don't know if we've heard from all the board members on their thoughts on this type of mixed use development, townhomes for sale, just the general aspect. I think it fits the property. I think it fits the desire of what we're trying to promote in downtown Woodland Park. But I'd be interested to hear what the other board members think.
The concept does fit. I think it works. I look forward to seeing the concept worked into some design schematics to see the flow and what the true look of the structures might be, what the courtyard open spaces look like. Because we have other mountain communities that we see this working. So it'd be nice to see that concept.
Okay. Yeah.
Jerry?
Well, personally, I've been a big fan of you guys from the beginning, but honestly, in my personal opinion, that area is not really designed for, or it's better suited as a business project. That and the fact that it could be utilized for local recreational projects. You're talking about a putt-putt golf course and a froyo, and different things like that. I was pretty excited. My point is I'm disappointed that that's got to go away. And I understand it's economically unfeasible and stuff, but I think the utilization should be less residential and more commercial.
Thank you. Any comments?
Well, I do have a comment and a question about what Jerry just mentioned. You had previously talked here and said you were not very enthusiastic about residential on this site at all. And now it's almost all residential. So what changed?
Economics.
So, but the previous, economics was around before you were here the first time.
Yeah. So we did have a model. 6 acres versus 15 acres is a very different development site. And I do have some experience in event management. So there is a financial model that can be built around event management. And so part of our acquisitions was being able to have indoor event management, outdoor event management, having sufficient consistent excess parking available to handle these events. And in order to pull that off, we needed the extra land in order to make that work. And then there, even within the event management itself, there's an economic model. With the constraints that are there now, I don't see how we can pull off all of those elements in order to have successful event management. So that's where the economic model starts to fall apart on us. And then the thing I liked about the event management, to bring history, in the winter months, we start to bring some of the home shows and the boat shows and the, Phil put show at the end of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you start to bring some of that up the hill where our hill doesn't have to go down to Colorado Springs for that attendance. And that brings traffic up to Woodland Park too. And that traffic up to Woodland Park as a destination location for those events. And then our strategy on that, I understand we also have a park here. I want to be careful, my choice of words. We would have put a in an event management team. So it would have been focused on turning the event management into a profit center. The way it sits, I don't think we can get there. By the way, I love the rodeo, growing up in the rodeo. My dad's hobby as a kid, he had 100 horses on the ranch, and that was his hobby. And so, yeah, to get excited about things like that, it's easy for me to get excited about it. But at the end of the day, we've got to make the numbers work. I think the one thing that we still want to bring into it is how do we treat it as more of a master plan? So even though yes, it is residential and mixed use, as we bring the designers in and they do the work, how do we get that continuity from, you've got a really nice welcome center, right? My understanding of what I hear is there's seldom any traffic there. So how do we talk about invitations. So when we do landscape work, we talk about how do you invite somebody from the front of your yard to the back of your yard. When we're in a commercial project, we just did a large commercial project in downtown Colorado Springs. How do we do invitations from one side of the facility to the other side of the facility? So as foot traffic comes in, we're able to disperse that foot traffic so it doesn't feel crowded. Same thing here. How do we create invitations from the welcome center to the courtyards to what are now drainage ditch and retention ponds that now become landscape features as a part of a master plan within the community? So I think we still bring some of those community elements by how we create invitations for that foot traffic to be able to disperse and spread throughout the area.
Okay, to summarize this, you're going to talk to Arden. The board is aware of that. That has got approval.
Yeah, I was just gonna give my feedback on the high level concept plan.
Oh, okay.
Uh, Because I look at it a little bit different than the other board members. I do wear the council hat, so I kind of represent the voice of the citizens when I look at the projects. And I do want the board members to know, I think it was very prudent that you at least pulled up the comprehensive plan and pulled out the 4 or 5 things that mentioned the housing. I think if you look even further, you will find a second thing that the citizens have expressed as a desire, because I read, I scanned every single one of the surveys that was submitted. The restaurants and the retail were 2 other things mentioned along with the housing. Maybe in your future, pull those bullets up so it reminds the board, you're not just doing something good for the business community in the downtown, which is your responsibility, but you're also helping the cities, what the citizens have asked for in how that property is used. So your concept plan is right in line with what the citizens would like to see done with that property. So I am right now inclined to support your effort at the high level. I do agree. We put a pause on the exclusivity. Maybe that's just to let some loose threads be tightened down, some discussions, and then come back in. I don't know whether it's going to be a 30-day pause or 60-day, 30-60. I'll say a 60-day pause. And then hear the final discussions of how the adjacent property might also be, because I'm concerned that it's like Tony, that we have a kind of a master plan for that area for the whole citizens and businesses. And I think that can only be possible with a 60-day pause where you can, have some final discussions. But I think his plan really was spot on. And now it looks like it economically will work. I've been very skeptical of the previous concept plan, and maybe because of what I had read from Sally, she had provided some books for me to read, so I was educated as a council member on how to judge projects. I think you're now in the wheelhouse that this will work. We should be behind it.
Okay, finish the summary. Does that work for this board? 60-day? In 60 days, we'll see you and we'll move from there.
Okay, I want to make sure that the board is, as part of the document project, the intent is for us to give them any TIF agreement data that they request. Is that okay? Can I get consensus on that?
Yes, I think that's good
Yes.
too. I think we have a consensus of the board for that as well. Does that work for you, Chad?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great. Is there an attorney that we could work with so that as we develop our initial draft, we can?
Yes, I will be happy to give you his name and phone number and his email.
Okay,
When we're done here, I have that and I'll give that to you.
And can
Is
we
that
get-
good for the board?
Yeah,
that he
can we get a
works with our
consensus
attorney?
that spending, allowing that attorney some time to be, he can be engaged?
Consensus? Yes?
Yes.
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 Okay.
okay.
Okay,
The attorney from our
Consensus
side
with the
would be
chiefs.
Paul Brown. So he is on board inside of our own company. So
okay,
and you can read his background if you want. He has extensive experience in
Okay.
this space.
okay, we'll get you set up. Great, Chad.
Okay,
I think this is a great plan. All the things that we wanted to do have not penciled out. It has all come back to this. So I think that this is probably how we'll have to go to make it develop it all and come out for our community as well as the builders. So moving forward then, thank you, Chad. I'll give you the attorney's name.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for a good presentation. Quickly, Rebecca's contract, I did get it from Kim. She kindly, Amy, she kindly wrote it up. To John, it has been signed by Rebecca and it is $25 an hour and paid monthly. And that will stay as such until the board decides to do something different, whatever that is. Just so you know, all good? So
Yep.
Rebecca's
Yep.
handled. To discuss the cog car. I have talked to you, I talked to you at the last meeting. I have researched this. I have gone through the channels, I think of everyone. And I have a letter here from the UPass Historical Society. And I guess where I'm going with this, I would like board to consider with this bill of sale to sign the cog car and the team of horses and wagon to the Historical Society to manage and maintain. Now, I don't know where the cog car, it would just be the car and the horses. I don't know where it's going to end up. I don't know if it's going to stay where it is or be moved. The Historical Society would not be responsible for the cost in that because they don't have the money to do that. But they would operate and maintain the cog car, decorate it at Christmas, use it. We do have a committee that has agreed, if this goes through, that has agreed to be a committee to manage the cog car and through the Historical Society. It would be under the Historical Society, which in conjunction is part of the city. And it takes it out of the hands of the DDA and puts it in a more permanent place so that when the DDA is finished, it has a home and it has been operating for the community through that time. Does that sound good to this board?
Yes.
I have a letter from the DDA or to the DDA from Dwayne Carter as well.
Oh, you do?
He is the one that has spent over $15,000 on the car. He's the only one that has a financial interest and he thinks that's great. If you want me to read them, I will. If not, I do have the letters that they would be willing to accept the car. Can I get some conversation on that? And would you be willing to do that?
The terminology in the contract, does the language understand that they would maintain the responsibility of maintaining it if Mr. Williams' plan goes forward, however he wants to incorporate it, and the language
Where-
allows for that
yeah,
flexibility?
wherever that goes, wherever it lights, ends up, wherever, they will manage it.
And
Does that work for you, Chad? I mean, that doesn't matter to you, does it?
I gotta apologize. I wasn't fully engaged in
Okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. It's about the cog car. And I don't know whether it's gonna stay there or not, but the Historical Society would maintain it, manage it, operate it, keep it for the community. It belongs to the Historical Society and it's theirs and they have.
I think we're down. We're a few steps down the road. Certainly that would need to be taken into consideration, but I think that's part of the whole master plan.
Right.
Back to the whole flow, as you use, good term, and I call it invitations. How are we inviting people through the park and who knows, maybe the car ends up in the middle of the courtyards.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yes, okay. Michael? Do you have anything to say about that?
From the city's perspective, you and I had talked about this, Mary Jo, but if we as a city could see a copy of whatever agreement, just so we fully understand it, that would be beneficial as
Okay.
well.
Well, I guess I'm saying today, if that works for this board, we'll draw up a contract for that goes with the bill of sale as to who's responsible for what and how it works. I think the cog car will be under the city's insurance through the Historical Society, like the rest of the Historical Society owners or whatever they are
Right.
using.
Right. And we had that conversation with Suzanne, and I think she was okay with that. She didn't express any concerns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tony?
Yeah, so that was gonna be my only question in the process. I think the Historic Society is a better owner of those assets, and they could better manage them and better put them to use for the community. So I think it makes sense. My only question was the insurance, and if that's been resolved, then I'm okay.
Yes. Al?
I was just going to reflect that. I was happy to hear that you've already reached out to Dwayne Carter and he concurs.
Mhm.
So if he concurs, then I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did with him first. I mean, after the board, I was with him
Excellent.
first. So.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, so does that sound okay? Then I will draw up with the Historical Society and probably Michael or Suzanne, a little contract of what that will entail. And I have the bill of sale for the cog car here. We'll put all that together, move forward. Good?
Good.
Yes.
All right. Okay, an update on the excess downtown funding, Michael?
So I'm not entirely sure of what the board was hoping to accomplish with this item. I did ask Rebecca to provide the schedule from the 2021 budget. So I don't know if you all had a chance to look over that. Obviously, that's a little bit dated, but that does give some context, the amount of money that the city spends in the downtown area proportional to the rest of the city. We did not work one of those up for the 2022 budget. Kip Wiley was working on that for 2022, but has engaged in other projects and has not completed that as of yet. But in short, there is no excess money. The vendor fee, the city kept that for a time and it was set aside. It was all general fund money. That money has since been depleted. And so the schedule was a way to show how much the city is routinely spending on capital projects and then routine maintenance in the downtown area. We increased that amount in the 2022 budget. We added an additional staff member for maintenance specifically for the downtown area in 2022. That person has since been hired and they're working on preparations for flowers and cleanup and sidewalk and road repair, even as we speak. So, if there's more that the board would like, I would prefer that be a request from the city council to work up that analysis. But if that's something you feel is pertinent, we can work on that.
Okay, I did see that and thank you for putting that together and putting that out.
Right,
So,
just another
yes.
comment. From a business owner's standpoint now, very appreciative of the effort that the city's making in order to assist the downtown corridor and stuff. Anyway, it's very noticeable, and I for one appreciate the effort.
Thank you.
No comment? Thank you again, Michael. Appreciate your time. My term ends in June, and I would assume that I will be replaced. I will fill in my request to be reappointed. I would like to stay on the board long enough to work with Michael and Chad and the developers to a point where a contract is signed and an agreement is made to move on. And then at that time, I would resign because I'm sure I'll be replaced. But I'd like to have that time, if it's all right with the board, and I will put that on. I need to say it here because I will probably not be able to comment on that at the council meeting. And I would just like to say that's what I'm going to put on my request for reappointment, is to be reappointed until such time the development has been signed and agreed to move forward. So I don't know if the board has any comment on that. I just wanted that to be a public statement because I doubt that I'll be reappointed without that. I don't know if I will even with that. So that was really all that's about. General discussion. Al, we'll start with you.
Nothing additional. Thank you.
Matt.
Nothing right now. Thank you.
Okay. John.
Nothing right now.
Gary.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Nothing for me. Nothing for me, thank you.
Tony?
I did provide a document project update. I don't know if we want to put that
I
on the
saw
agenda
that.
for the next few meetings, but I won't read it because you have it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out or ask. High level, we have retrieved the boxes from Iron Mountain Storage. The city accommodated that. 11 boxes. They're now in the records vault at the bank, and the scanner will start working on those Thursday. I have no ETA. The bigger part of the project is coming up with any document project is coming up with proper naming convention, indexing. There's a lot of work goes into just scanning. The intent is to make all the documents PDF readable. The other thing we did, and Rob helped us with that, and then Grace Johnson got us set up on Civics Plus, which is the city's platform for pushing out content to the public. And so now we have the ability, once we turn it on, to push out DDA documents so they're accessible to the public. My initial kind of attack strategy is that I think this board, this particular board was seated last July, if I'm not mistaken. The first order of business will be all the records, reports, minutes from July forward will be indexed first, just so that we get in front of that. Then we're going to go back and kind of index the 11 years or 11 boxes of historical. I also think it's prudent. The former treasurer, Mr. Coy, provided us a thumb drive with a ton of files. I think we should put that up there as is, as he gave it to us, without it being touched, if you will, because I think that's prudent. So that'll be published up there, and that requires a lot of work because the way their platform works, you have to set up each folder, then each subfolder, and then push the files individually. So that's going to be a project in and of itself. Anyway, so the goal will be, and then maybe the next 60 days, 90. I'll have a better handle once you start scanning, but have all the documents scanned, pushed up to the site and accessible to anyone from the public at any time. So
That's good. That's good. And that'll handle some records that go back before the DEA kind of took over their own thing. So that will research what happened prior under the executive directors, and people can see that. That'll be a good thing. And I think that drive that Tanner gave you, I believe, is what was given to him when the city scanned it and did it. And that's So that should match the one that came from the city too.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter, but
Yeah,
I
no,
think
sir.
that's what that was, because we didn't go through any of that.
Well,
So thank you for doing
From my
that, Tony. I
perspective,
think
I
that'll be
think-
a very good star beside our name.
I think it's good for the public, and I think for us as board members to be able to go back and touch, especially this TIF agreement stuff, that's where my main focus is. I forgot to say that getting that under control, making sure it's synchronized. And I haven't passed it on yet, but I just got an email from Mr. Page asking for his TIF reimbursement. And I'm like, okay, so I'll get that passed on, but we have to get that under control. And I think we're a couple weeks away from
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's important. It makes it hard because each contract's different. We have to read each one, so that's good.
Yeah.
Good. Pardon? Okay. Chad, anything to say? No, good, Mark? Pat? Yeah, no? Karen, Michael? Mr. Zuloga, would you like to say something?
No, I just have a comment about what we're moving into spring. Is DEA planning to work with the city in terms of city cleanup? Traditionally, you go through pressure washing. Be attracted to guests coming in. Are there some of you who are not on that?
That's a good question, because we have hired in the past an outside city worker, because you have to collect all the water, that kind of thing. And I don't know where that's at with the city, but it certainly could use a bath.
Yeah.
The downtown, pretty bad. So that's a good question. We need to look into that. Thank you, Robert. Evan? Okay. Kelly, anything? Okay. If there's nothing else, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
And second, John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Rebecca, don't forget your tape recorder.
Oh, thank you so much.
Here we go. What I pushed. Whoops, I pushed the wrong. How did you go with Sharon?
I think it's mainly, I was just trying to get them an introduction here and get started.